Hi, Spring fans. Welcome to another very special presentation. This is a recording of Dr. Mark Pollack and myself speaking about Spring AI at Dev Nexus 2025, which just passed a month or two ago in amazing Atlanta, Georgia. Now, this show was, it's always great. It always hits on all cylinders, but this year was, for some reason, for me, even more special than usual. There's a lot of reasons. Well, let's talk about Devnexus first. Devnexus is a community conference. I think it's run by the Atlanta Java user group. It's just been this wonderful sort of shining beacon in the middle of the Java community, a watering hole for the entire community writ large to sort of converge. And it's a worldwide show, even though it's in Atlanta, Georgia, deep in the south of the states. It's something to which Europeans, Asians, South Americans, etc., Africans, everybody is what I'm trying to say. Everybody's drawn, right? And just this wonderful, wonderful show, and it's cheap, which is good because they do it to run the show effectively and do a good job of administering the show, but it's not driven in such a way, it's not run in such a way as to be exorbitant or extortionist. Okay, so it's really quite good. It's a really good show. They draw some of the best speakers in the world, and also I'm there separate from the best people in the world, and because it's a community-run show, they've just been so incredibly important to me, right? I have, I'll tell you a story. In, 14 years ago, something like that, I started working on the Spring team in 2010. This is probably 2011, 2012, something like that. I was half an hour late for one of my presentations at Devnexus. I know, very unprofessional, not good. I would never do it on purpose, but I screwed up badly, right? This is all my fault. I was on a flight the night before on a red eye, right? And this is a common thing, by the way. You would be surprised by how many times I've gotten off a plane, dropped off my luggage at a hotel, and then wandered over to a conference center, given a presentation, and then gone back to the hotel or whatever. Or even sometimes I'll fly into a city, do a thing, and then leave. I'll fly out the same day. I have usually places to go. So this is not an uncommon thing. But that night, that flight, that red eye, that one time, there was a baby that was just not having it, sleeping, or not sleeping, I should say, in the bassinet when the rest of us are trying to sleep. And I didn't get a wink. This baby was just having the worst time, and I feel awful for that poor little thing. I'm sure it was, not happy. Wow. You know what just occurred to me, though? As I say this, as I pronounce these words, I just realized that kid is probably 14 years old now, which is also weird. I wonder how that baby's got on in the world. Anyway, all that to say, I was dead tired on my feet, right? I got to the hotel, and all I remember is I sat on the bed. I was about to throw off my backpack and and let my luggage sit on the floor and undo my jacket. And the next thing I know, I'm half an hour late for my talk. The phone is ringing, and my colleague is saying, "Where are you? You're supposed to have been on stage 20 minutes ago, whatever." So thank goodness the conference center was just across the street from the hotel. This is back in the old convention center. Devnexus moved location at one point. So anyway, they were across the street, and I ran, across the street, which as an out of shape asthmatic, not great, not good. You don't want me to run. But nonetheless, I did, and I got there. I did the presentation. It wasn't good. It wasn't a good presentation. And I regret it to this day. I should have gotten there earlier. I should have drank more. I don't know. I should have done a lot of things to be less of a wreck in this entirely predictable situation. This is, of course, before the years of cheap commodity noise canceling headsets as well, right? So anyway, I was pretty sure I was never going to get to come back to that conference again. And nope, I was profusely, endlessly apologetic. I couldn't be more regretful. And they gave me a shot the next year, and ever since then I've, I made sure I got there in time. Didn't I? I made sure I got there with plenty of time, so that if I needed to take an 8-hour nap, I could take an 8-hour nap. Get a full night's sleep and be at my game. Come Devnexus time. And well worth it, right? Good show. This year was particularly great, right? This year was particularly great for me, at least. Because remember, it's always been a great show. But all shows worldwide, and some of you may not really like it's not immediately obvious to, I think, a lot of people, but a lot of shows have sort of faltered since the pandemic, right? If you're in a local jurisdiction, you might appreciate that some shows have faltered since the pandemic, but it's maybe you don't realize it's a worldwide thing. There's just been a general drag on the in-person conference attendance since the 2020, basically, since the virus, right? Since the pandemic. And things are looking up. Don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of the shows have some have even rebounded beyond their levels in 2019. I think Devnexus might even be one of those. I don't know. But nonetheless, you wouldn't know that it's not if it isn't to look at the conference. It's a booming scene, just lively and vibrant and wonderful. So really, really just super pleased, beyond all get out, to have this opportunity to be there. It's been, it's been fun to watch it kind of regain its footing since the pandemic. I think it is the strongest of the shows in the States, in terms of attendance and vendor reach and all that. It's just an amazing show. It's always been an amazing show. And it's one of the, if it's not the best Java show in the world, it's probably, the best show for Spring, is probably Spring 1 and then Spring IO. But for Java, like from everything from like Android to AI and everything in between, and it's one of the Nexus, right? That's an amazing show. Just an amazing show. And of course, the Spring team was there in full force this year. I think there were like 15 of us. I mean, there was a lot of Spring team people there. It was like a mini Spring 1, So all that to say, amazing event. And so I think I did my normal presentation, but then I did a presentation with Dr. Mark Pollack, who is the lead and founder of Spring AI. And we looked at, guess what? Spring AI. And, Dr. Pollack is he's a friend, and it's one of the, but he's also a hero. I mean, the guy, he's the best. He was there for like 5 years before I even joined the team. I mean, he's a OG GOAT, you know what I'm saying? Like, just a legend. I have so much respect for him. And so, and also just to say, I mean, understatement of the year award for me, but to say that he's busy, and it's one of the is a disservice to the concept of busy. You have no idea. The guy is leading the Spring AI project, one of the most visible projects in the AI space right now. And we're ramping down and running towards a 1.0 release. So yeah, he's busy. Okay. Nobody expects him to come out of his hidey hole for very long, because he's got stuff to do. And so when we talked about doing this show together, and I was like, yeah, he's going to make time. I was so excited. It was such a privilege. And it's one of the, thank you, Dr. Pollack, and thank you, Dev Nexus, for letting me use this content. So that's the other thing. I approached them and I said, look, I know you don't do this normally, and I won't ask, I won't make a habit of it, of course, but could I get the copy of this video? I know you've already got it, but can I put it on my little channel there just to memorialize it, to preserve it for posterity so I never lose it? Sort of like the presentation I did earlier this year with Phil Webb, my friend and founder of Spring Boot, Phil Webb. That was a very special presentation for me. That was one where, I really wanted a copy of that. I wanted to keep it. And the San Francisco Java user group there was extraordinarily indulgent in letting me copy it. So I really appreciate it when the community does these nice favors for people like me. Go check out Devnexus, DEVNEXUS. It's an amazing show. It's cheap. I mean, it's not cheap in quality. What I'm saying is they have the best speakers worldwide, but the tickets are cheap because it's run for community. It's not meant to be this overly highbrow thing that is exclusive or whatever. It's quite the contrary. And you're kind of you're situated in an area where there's food and drink and ample things to do. So even though the conference itself has a great spread of like lunch and drink and coffee and whatever, and there's espresso machines all over the place, you can just wander out with all your friends and have a great time. So it's a great show. It's a great trip to Atlanta. It's a great show. It's a great week. It's always kind of right at the edge of winter and the beginning of spring. And so it's not cold at all, right? It's comfortable, usually t-shirt weather. And it's just such a pleasant, yeah, you've got to go. You got to go to Devnexus if you have not. It's a great show. Thank you, Devnexus. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and enjoy.
My name is Mark Pollack, or as Josh likes to call me, Dr. Mark Pollack. I am a doctor, but not medical.
He's Dr. Mark Pollack to his friends, just Mark to everybody else.
Okay. And today we're here to talk about AI, a hot topic, of course. And more importantly, I'm the founder of the Spring AI project. And we're going to talk about how you can add AI into your applications, kind of give you a tour of the space, things you need to learn in order to become productive in this technology. And of course, AI is not new. It's been around as a topic in computer science for a long time, going back to the 50s. And it's constantly been refined and refined and refined over time. I think I started paying attention to it late 90s, maybe a little bit on and off, but really more so when there was this AlphaGo moment, which was a computer created by Google. And it was using these deep learning techniques and reinforcement learning in order to beat a grandmaster of Go in the game of Go. And yeah, it was incredible. It basically taught itself to play as compared to like the previous time where IBM was beating the world grandmaster in chess, and that was just like a brute force approach. And there were some moves made by this computer program that no one had seen in the history of Go, right? Like just floored, like, oh my God, it made that move. Very impressive. So now we're in this generative phase, right? 2021, roughly speaking. And here the key thing is, kind of defined by its name, is that it can generate new data, right? Previously, it was more about focused on problem or classification. So it's a completely different paradigm. And of course, in many ways, the Big Bang for most lay people, right, like myself included, was ChatGPT being launched in 2022. And really not too much fanfare. It's kind of like a research lab saying, here, try this. Well, lo and behold, early 2023, they already had 100 million users, right? So clearly, they found the right viral mix to have this technology enter the mainstream. And other people joined in, Microsoft added Bing support for AI, and unfortunately, even AI, I don't think could increase Bing's search numbers. But so yeah, AI doesn't solve all problems, not Bing's problem. But Google introduced Bard. Anthropic, another lab, introduced Claude in early 2023. So basically, things really start to kick off then. And so what makes it really unique? Well, there are a few properties. No training. If you've ever taken a Udemy course in machine learning, you're pretty much 3/4 of the way through the course, and you basically clean data and prepared data. Training, for me at least, not that fun. So what's good here is it's pre-trained, and the P in GPT means pre-trained. Human language is in the interface, so you don't have to send it a matrix or some complicated data structure. You literally kind of just talk to it in text. And for this crowd here, what's very important is you don't need to be a data scientist to use generative AI or a machine learning specialist. One of the innovations was that they just exposed all this technology through a simple REST API, simpler than the S3 API introduced decades ago. So us coming from a software background is very important, right? Because it's kind of shifting into that domain away from the core domain of machine learning. So what can you do with it? One of the most common use cases is basically to do question and answering over your documents, or summarizing long things, like summarizing YouTube videos, summarizing, a legal brief, right? Oddly enough, when people summarize legal briefs, they specifically ask it to find almost like the Easter eggs in it, the hidden surprises, right? Kind of remove the boilerplate and just show me what the lawyer's trying to sneak in there. Intelligent chatbots, no one loves chatbots, but maybe we can make them better, right? A little more effective. In banking, fraud detection is a very common use case, but there's a use case here I suggest you try. It's more near and dear to everyone's heart, is around developer productivity. I don't know if anyone's went to any of the IDE vendors in the hallway, but there is a great set of tools that have gotten very mature in the past 6 months, or 3 months maybe, for helping you write code, write documentation, just by chatting in a little sidebar in your IDE. It's very effective. I use it. And I think what's important is, of course, most people here, I'm sure, are working for a company, and that company has goals. But I think it's important for you to find your own personal aha moment, right? I did that early on with code generation, and I just looked at it and was like, my God, this thing is really real. Or I just asked it to categorize my GitHub issues in a project, and it did it in 4 minutes instead of me sitting with a team member for 4 hours. If you have these aha moments, that's what you latch onto to kind of, get past the hype. And trust me, there's a lot of hype, but that's what technology is like. So what we have really is the evolution of a category of software developer, basically, called the AI engineer. So you have the machine learning engineer point of view on the left, the software engineer point of view on the right, and slowly these two spheres are converging, and there's a common set of skills and techniques you need to know as an AI engineer. And we're going to cover kind of the basics in a quick tour today. Even with 60 minutes, it's hard to cram all of this in. So what is Spring AI? Well, it is literally an application framework for AI engineering. And what does that mean slightly more concretely? Is that Spring has always been known, going back to slides you might see from 20 years ago, for portable service abstractions. What this means in this world is that, in the AI world, is that there are many models out there. All of them have different APIs. There are many vector stores, which is a key technology that accompanies typically AI use cases. Tons of companies, all of them different APIs. So we provide a uniform API to help you access all of them, even the query API for vector stores that's unified, because they all have different query languages, in addition to different APIs. So this makes it easy for you to use different models, swap them in and out. Developer productivity, this is a key foundation of Spring and every other application framework, basically, nothing new there. But if you look at the details of what they give you as the raw parts, you do need to build some scaffolding to remove boilerplate code on top of it. This is particularly true in the case of tools, which we'll get to, basically functions that the AI model can call. It's nasty stuff. You never want to write that in your life. They're all different, of course, right? Because everyone made their own way to do this. So we provided layers on top that make that very easy. And last but not least, we'll have a little timeline that goes on throughout this talk. Things are changing very fast, right? Within 6 months, there could be a new technology dropped, and you're like, well, this is a game changer. We better support it. So we're kind of constantly chasing that technology curve. So roughly speaking, you have your input, which is a prompt. That's sort of the word for input. Prompt consists of many sections, but right now let's just focus on it being your question. It goes to the big brain, and you get output. And that's it, like stimulus response. Don't you ever think? Sort of. And all the good parts about this is, you can send it your language, text comes in, text come out, but there are downsides. And these downsides, oops, just go off?
Ruh-roh.
Ruh-roh, hello. Oh, maybe.
Back.
Okay, it's back. These downsides are usually addressed with kind of patterns or technology that the model itself provides to help you solve these problems. And we'll go through some of these in the talk. One of the most basic ones, which is an innovation by OpenAI, is you need to kind of tell it to act in a certain persona, to align what it outputs to your goals. And this is through a technique called using the system prompt. One thing that's surprising to people when they first encounter this technology is that they're used to using ChatGPT, a chatbot, but the underlying model itself is stateless. So when you're typing in ChatGPT, that's an application written on top of the raw model that the API gives you access to, and now you have to actually implement your own memory management. Kind of like sessions in a typical web app. It's trained on so much data, which is so impressive. However, hopefully it hasn't penetrated your corporate firewall, and it's not trained on your data. It's not trained on your APIs. So there are techniques called tool calling and prompt stuffing, which is literally as coarse as it sounds, is you take your data and you use the powerful string concatenation operator, and you shove that into the prompt and send it on its way. When this first started, essentially all you could send ChatGPT through the API was 4,000 words. Not a lot of words, right? That's grown over time, but it's led to a technique called retrieval augmented generation, and this technology called vector stores, where you take your million-word document, you chop it up into small pieces, and then at runtime, you retrieve the parts that are most similar to your question, you concatenate it, pass That's the augmentation. And you send it off to get generated. So that's the RAG in a nutshell. And last, but very much not least, is it's prone to hallucinations. Just this technology wants to fill in what is statistically the right thing for it to output next. And sometimes that's very far from the truth. But it could sound great, but it might not be factual.
Sometimes it's clear-cut nonsense, though.
Yeah,
the other day, I asked it a question about programming languages, and it listed PHP. I'm like, that's not real.
Always with the PHP.
Terrible language.
And so, much like you have unit integration tests, you'd be fired if you didn't write unit integration tests in your job. Similarly, if you're writing an AI application, I would fire you if you weren't writing evaluations, right? So it's a key part of it, and we'll showcase kind of this app in small when Josh takes the stage in a moment. What we're showing here is sort of a typical workflow with doing Q&A over your documents, let's say. You have to have some way to get your data that the model hasn't been trained on into one of these vector stores. And luckily, this is kind of like an integration problem. Spring is great at integration. There's tons of libraries to access your data, Spring Data, Spring Integration, Batch. All of this universe of technologies can come to bear on how you load data and chop it up into small pieces into the vector store. And here you see there are many, many vendors that offer it. In fact, most traditional vendors now, database vendors, are adding this technology into their stack. So it's quite likely you're able to already use this without asking to procure a new technology. Although there are dedicated ones, and when you get into the weeds, you can see there might be pros and cons to picking one over the other for your use case. So that's kind of like a loading step, a batch step. Batch never dies, right? There you go. Here it is. And the bottom part is like, well, how do I talk to it? How do I bring this information, to the model? How do I interact with the model? The abstraction we use is a chat client for different modalities. There's an image client, video, and then they get mixed up and whatever. So the point is that you have access to all of these models through a common API. You can swap them out. And it's not so much like a database where you're saying, oh, I'm getting rid of Oracle and I'm using Postgres. It's normal in a robust AI application to use multiple models simultaneously. So it's not kind of like the big switch, right, like you'd have with a database. You're really meant to use different models for different purposes. For example, in the evaluation, you might use a judge model, right? It's dedicated to knowing how to determine if things are factually correct or not. So with that, I'll let Josh take the stage.
Thanks, Doc.
Give a tour of everything.
Thank you. Before we get underway, hi, everybody. We should get a photo. Is that okay? Okay, great. Okay, come on, Doc. Let's get a photo. Let's do this. Come on. Just pretend like you're happy. Come on. Come on. Okay.
What if I'm not pretending?
I know. It's okay. Everybody over there and then the rafters, say open source. Open source. Okay, middle section, open source. And over there. Thank you so much.
Christmas coffee table book of his photos coming out
just
next
the nice
year.
People. I know. You know what I do? You know what I do with those photos?
What?
I'm going to take those photos, the 3 photos. I'm going to show them to my daughter, and I'm going to say, "See, they listen to me."
I think I need to show it to my kids too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So look, we're super excited to be here. We have to show you a lot of different things, right, in action. And we were contemplating long and hard about what we could do to show you this. And we think, well, maybe we could try out the old Spring Pet Clinic example, right, from yesteryear. That's a very familiar example. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the Spring Pet Clinic. Okay, it's been around for like 20 years, okay? And we thought we could bring that out and kind of retool it to do AI stuff and yeah, maybe. But it's too much. It's a big app, right? A lot of moving parts. So we thought, what if we did something in that same spirit, in the same vein, related to pets and adoptions and dogs and cats and all? I mean, come on. Who doesn't love animals and pets and dogs and cats and the like, right? Everybody loves animals and stuff, right? I mean, everybody, right? All of it. We all love dogs and cats. I mean, I love almost all animals. I love almost all animals. Yeah, every animal except mine. Except my animal. My dog is terrible. The worst dog. His name is Peanut, and he's not a good dog. Not a good boy. The worst dog. We keep him, though, for 3 reasons, okay? The bedrock truth that even terrible dogs deserve loving homes. That's 1. 2, and I'm just going to be real here with you, it's ego, okay? It's ego. Because in my home, my partner and my daughter both speak 5 languages. But 3.5.
So if we didn't have that stupid dog, I would be the stupidest in the house. That will not, it will not stand. It will not stand. So we keep him for that reason. And then just being real here, again, just being very, very real here with y'all. He is pretty stinking cute. I mean, look at him. Oh, I know. He's so cute on the outside. On the outside. On the inside, it's pure evil. Pure malice, okay? Very, very, very bad dog. This is, in fact, the best way to experience Peanut the dog is through a photo on the other side of the country, right? You're looking at a photo on the other side of the country as him. So that's the safest way to experience my dog, Peanut. And he reminds me of another dog about which I learned during the pandemic called Prancer. Now, how many of you, do you remember all the crazy things we did during lockdown? One of the things I was doing back then, which I haven't done since or before, is sit and watch the news as it's airing on TV, right? Imagine, like some sort of sociopath, right? Like nowadays you just watch just watch the headlines or something, right? So this woman put out this advert trying to find a new home for her dog back in April of 2021, and she describes this dog named Prancer, okay? And she describes this dog hilariously. She says, I've tried for the last several months to post this dog for adoption and make him sound palatable. The problem is he's just not. There is not a very big market for neurotic, man-hating, animal-hating, children-hating dogs that look like gremlins. But I have to believe there's someone out there for Prancer because I'm tired, and so is my family. Every day we live in the grips of the demonic Chihuahua hellscape he has created in our home. Right, doesn't sound like the best doggo. But she continues, this is so sad. I was excited to see him come out of his shell and become a real dog. I am convinced at this point that he's not a real dog, but more like a vessel for a traumatized Victorian child that now haunts our home. Wow. Can you imagine writing those things about an animal? And she continues, warns rather ominously, Prancer wants to be your only child. Right? What does that mean? Right? So, and yeah, not good. Just all of it not good. She even continues, he's only 2 years old, but will probably live to be 21 through pure spite. Right? So, yeah, doesn't sound like a good dog, but come on, super cute, right? Super cute. Super cute. I'd pet that. Come on, that's a cute dog. So, I thought, well, we could build like a dog adoption service, right? Something like that in that spirit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the old start.spring.io. We're going to build a new service here called Adoptions, okay? And we have some dependencies that we need to add. We're going to add the Graalvm native image support naturally. We're going to bring in the Spring web support. We're going to need a data store. So I'm going to use Postgres with vector capabilities. Remember, there's a whole number of different implementations. Postgres happens to have great vector store capabilities. So I'll bring in the PG vector implementation there. I'm going to need an ORM to make that easy, so I'll use Spring Data JDBC. I'm going to bring in OpenAI, right? There are many different AI modules, as we just discussed, supported here, including OpenAI, Bedrock, Gemini, Azure, all this good stuff. All that is there. But I'm going to bring in OpenAI because why not? You can also use Olama if you want on-prem hosted versions. You can bring in the actuator if you want. I'm going to bring in the dev tools as well. Anything else I've forgotten there, good doctor of mine? Oh yeah, we need to also bring in the MCP client. Now look, we're going to get to this later, okay? But keep that in the back of your mind. That's going to be important for later, okay? That's called foreshadowing, friends, okay? Okay, good? Good. Open this up, UAO adoptions.zip. We're going to open this up in the IDE. I'm using IntelliJ. It doesn't really much matter which. I've already got a SQL data store, Postgres, running in the background. So the first order of business is to get this thing connected and talking to that. So I'll say JDBC Postgres QL localhost my database. And then we're going to configure the username, which is going to be my user, right? And then the password will be secret, okay? So that'll be our secret. Don't tell anybody that. I'm going to click on this, hit test, hit apply, hit OK, go over here to IntelliJ, open this up here, click on my database, click on public, click on tables, and there's our dog table, and there's our dog Prancer, okay? He's described as a demonic, neurotic, man-hating, animal-hating, children-hating dog that looks like a gremlin, okay? So we want to be able to adopt this doggo and take him home, okay? So I think that's good. We also need to connect to OpenAI, okay? There are different implementations, but you configure them in the same way, through the same Spring Boot way. You configure properties. Now, I need to configure an OpenAPI key. Friends, I've already done that before I got on stage. I exported this before I got on stage as an environment variable. It's already done, trust me. Please forgive me for not leaking my API credential, okay? Now, we have this dog adoption application. So I'm going to call it adoptions. Okay, and we're going to build a controller, a simple chatbot, the much maligned chatbot about which Dr. Pollack spoke so ruefully just a little bit ago. And we're going to call it a controller, a response body, and we're going to call it the dog adoption controller. And this is going to be a little chatbot. So we're going to have an endpoint here which takes an ID that represents the user's context, the user session or whatever. You could use Spring Security in a more realistic example. And then we're going to have an endpoint here called inquire that returns a response, and we're going to come back to that in a second. It's going to, you're going to specify the parameter as a question like so, okay? So in order for that to work, we need to give it a pointer to the chat client. Now, if you've ever used anything else in the Spring ecosystem, you're well familiar with the idea of the clients. You've got the REST client, the JDBC client, the web client, etc. And this is your chat client. It, in turn, talks to your model. So your REST client, you can create as many of those as you want, but you probably only have one or two, your JDBC client, you can create as many of those as you want, but you've probably only got one or two databases. Same thing here. You can have as many chat clients as you want with different configurations. It's cheap, but the chat models, you typically only have a handful or one or two or three, right? Okay, so there's this. We've got the client. Let's try it out. Let's inject that thing into this, private final chat client, add that to this. I'm going to inject that into the constructor. I'm just realizing the name is Singularity. Very good, okay, very good. That's not loaded at all. That'll be fine. So we're going to inject that, and we're going to ask a simple question of the singularity, okay? And we're going to specify a prompt. What kind of prompt? A user prompt, okay? And we're going to pass in the question that the user asks. We're going to make the call, and we're going to then get the content out. Now, of course, I did prompt and then specify user. There is actually a shortcut that you can use that is that, right? If you want, in this case. But as we'll see, it's kind of useful in this case to have the distinction, but it's not always, okay? So, what do you think? So far, so good?
It's juicy.
Okay, let's give that a run. And we're going to do this new thing that James Ward showed me how to do yesterday. So scratches. There, I did it. Look at that first try. It was not the first try. This took hours, okay? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and ask a simple question. We're going to make a simple statement. We're going to talk to the model to establish, proof of life, basically. So my name is Josh. We're going to send a request to the service saying, my name is Josh. What does it give me? Okay, it says, nice to meet you, Josh. How can I assist you today? Great. We're connected.
Hooray!
That feels good. Yeah.
One line of code.
Yeah, first try. It was not the first try. So that's working, right? We made a request. It was a very small request. We said, my name is Josh, 4 words, right? And it gave us a sentence, a very small sentence. So the way that these models typically measure the cost, be it complexity or dollars and cents cost, is via something called a token, okay? So the larger the request and the response, the more tokens you end up consuming per interaction with the model. And that token number is a very interesting number to keep track of. So if you're using Spring Boot's actuator module in conjunction with Spring AI, it'll automatically surface that token count, right? It's a proxy for the complexity of the query. And, if it helps, you can call it like a word. 1 word equals 1 token. Not always true, but it can be true, okay? Close enough for now. So I think we're good. I think we're good, but now I want to ask it about we want to find Prancer, don't we? Remember, we're trying to build an assistant.
No, you want memory.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. We want to be able to find,
what's his name?
Right, we want to be able to find our fictitious, we want to find our dog, Prancer, and this is meant to be you want to do that first, or do we do the system thing first?
No, do the
Okay.
memory
right.
first.
Oh, yeah, okay. So this is,
Now ask it, what's your name?
okay, great. The next
You think it's so smart, but it doesn't know his name.
No, I don't. The very next question that I would like to ask it now is, what's my name, right? We've just established my name. I said, hi. I said, my name is Josh. It says, great, nice to meet you, Josh. Let's ask it again. What the next question is, what's my name, okay? And it says, I don't have access to personal information, right? So I can't answer your name. I can't know your name. However, if you'd like to share it or have a nickname you prefer, let me know. So what's happening here is the model is stateless. It has amnesia. It's like Dory from Finding Nemo, right? You tell it something and it forgets each time. Unlike the browser experience with ChatGPT, which maintains history associated with your user account. That history gets propagated on each request. So it's basically a longer and longer message each time containing everything you've sent up until that point. And the AI is able to process that each time and answer the questions usefully. But here, that's not happening. No context is associated with that. So what we want to do is configure an advisor to propagate that information. So I'm going to create a map here, okay? And an advisor is how Spring AI processes requests, okay? So we're going to call this a prompt chat memory advisor, and memory And so for each user, there will be an advisor that we're going to configure. It's like an interceptor that will get sent along with the request. So I'll say var memory, var advisor equals this.memory.compute if absent ID, okay? And then we're going to create a new prompt chat memory advisor, passing in a new in-memory chat memory, okay? Now you can, of course, use something that's more durable, obviously, but I think that'll work. Okay, let's make that a lambda, fix that, so much nicer, okay? Good, so there's our new advisor. We're gonna delegate to that, and we're gonna pass it in when we make the call. So we'll say advisor, we're gonna fix this. This isn't 2008.
You can use default. That's
Sorry?
fine. That's good, yeah.
Oh yeah,
No, that's fine.
actually, yeah, we'll do it here.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so we've got the caching advisor there. I still misspelled it. IntelliJ helped me, and it still was wrong. Incredible. So we've got the advisor. Let's go ahead and redeploy this thing with that in place. Okay, go back to the chat client thing here, and we're going to try again, starting from the top. My name is Josh. Great, nice to meet you, Josh. How may I assist you today? Fine. Okay, what's my name? Your name is Josh. Huh? Much better, much better. So that advisor mechanism is super important to how we do this, right? You can decorate your request and response with extra capabilities by plugging in 0 to n advisors, okay? Now, and by the way, you can have advisors that in turn talk to other models. So, think about that possibility there. So we've got now an advisor, we got that in place. I think it's time to start asking it the big important questions that we all want to know, which is,
I want my dog.
yeah, I want my dog.
A
Where do I
neurotic
get?
one.
Where's Prancer, the neurotic dog? And we want this to act as an employee of our fictitious dog adoption agency called Pooch Palace. Okay, so we need to ask it that. Let's try asking it just a simple question: do you have a neurotic dog? Okay, and it says I don't have dogs. By the way, what a sad state of affairs that the computer has to tell us I, as an AI model, don't have dogs. What does it think of us? Anyway, but neurotic behavior in dogs can be quite common. Okay, so it's a well-intentioned, if misguided response. It's trying to help us deal with neurotic dogs, which is not, fine.
Something you'd normally do.
Yeah, well, it doesn't know that we're trying to find and take possession of one, right? It thinks we want to manage it. No, I want the neurotic, So what we need to do is to teach it to behave as though it's an employee working for our fictitious dog adoption agency called Pooch Palace. And we do that by communicating it with a system prompt, okay? A system prompt governs the persona, the tone and tenor in which the model responds to us. It overrides or it sets the stage for the questions that the user sends in the user prompt. So let's specify that here, okay, as a default user prompt, okay? And I'll say default system prompt, and pass it in. Now I happen to have a system prompt on the command line. I've already written this out onto my local file system. There it is there. You know what, that doesn't feel right at all, actually. I'm sorry. Dog, desktop, talk, system prompt. Better. Okay, so I'm going to take that, paste that in there, and there we go. And this is the prompt, okay? Go ahead and run that. And it says, you are an AI-powered assistant to help people adopt a dog from the adoption agency named Pooch Palace with locations in Antwerp, Seoul, Tokyo, Singapore, Paris, Mumbai, New Delhi, Barcelona, San Francisco, and London. Information about the dogs available will be presented below. If there's no information, then return a polite response suggesting we don't have any dogs available. And that's, oh, wait, you know what? I'm so sorry. This is so embarrassing, Atlanta. There we go, okay? There we go, Shirley. Okay, so there we go. There's a system prompt, okay? Let's go ahead and try it out, yeah? Let's go ahead and run this with our dog adoptions thing. And we're going to say, do you have any neurotic dogs? I'm sorry, I don't have any information about neurotic dogs available for adoption at Pooch Palace. Okay, so it didn't know about Prancer yet, but at least it's acting like it should, right? It's acting like, you might even think you're talking to a real person. You might be forgiven for thinking you're talking to somebody sat behind a console that, for whatever reason, is down and they're unable to bring up the inventory of dogs, the catalog of the dogalog of dogs, okay? Now, what we need to do is to give it access to our data, right? And this is what Dr. Pollack referred to it earlier as RAG. And we're going to do that by first loading it into a vector store to support winnowing down the results that we want. We don't want to send all the data. In point of fact, we've only got 18 records right now, so we could send all 18 records, but it's the principle of
real Pooch Palace would have so much.
Yeah, 19 even. The sky's the limit, right? So we want to get a sub-select of the data so that we don't waste complexity and time and token counts on results that don't matter. We only want to send the things that might conceivably be pertinent. So what we're going to do is we're going to access our data store, so we need to actually integrate a little bit. This is going to take a little while, but look, I'm a big believer that if we work hard and we put our heads together, we can do anything. And so talking to a data store, it's not easy, right? It's not easy. Nobody ever said it would be easy. But again, my dad said anything worth doing is worth doing. Anything worth doing is worth doing right? And he wasn't wrong. I mean, it does take time to do this kind of stuff, to do data access logic, but I believe we can do it. Okay, it's done. So let's now go back to our chat client here, and we're going to get the dog repository here, okay? And we're going to get the vector store there, okay? And we're going to move it from one bucket to another. We're going to move it from the SQL data store and then write it out to the vector store, which in this case happens to both be Postgres, right? We're going to create a Spring AI document, and we're going to put in a string. What string? Any string, as long as you're consistent, right? It doesn't all that much matter. I'm just putting this, there's no schema, it's just content, and as long as you want to find similar things, then it's fine, right? So we're going to say vector store.add list.of document, okay? And then there's that, and that looks, you know what? No. Document. Okay, better. Okay, there we go. So there's we're going to write the data to the vector store, and that's good. Now we need to tell our chat client to consult that same vector store, and we're going to do that by configuring yet another advisor, like so. Okay, it's going to write things out to the vector store, but there is no vector store yet. We need to tell Spring AI to initialize the schema for us. Easy, and then I think we're good to go. Yeah, I think we can actually kind of see it in action. Let's go ahead and wait for the service to spin back up, and then ask it about neurotic dogs. Hello, did I restart it? Oh, I must have stopped it. Okay. And then go to my dog adoptions. Here we go. Do you have any neurotic dogs? Console. Server's up and running. Oh, it was initializing the embedding. So behind the scenes, it loaded all the data. It contacted OpenAI's embedding models endpoint, turned the string text into vectors, which is like a matrix of numbers, and then wrote that out to the vector store. That took a long time. So that took 7 seconds, right? So we want to make sure that we disable that so we don't reinitialize everything yet again, right? So if false, and then this, right? And so if you go back to our data store over here, refresh, you can see it says vector store, and there's the data, but we only want it's actually run it twice, didn't it? So let's just delete all that, okay? Refresh, there we go. There's the 18 records that we had and that we should have. This is the vector store capability. And now we can ask it questions as we intended to. So, do you have any neurotic dogs? Okay, I'm sorry, but I didn't have any information on neurotic dogs available for adoption at Pooch Palace. Very disconcerting. Why is that? Let's just try reinitializing this one more time. And maybe restarting the service. Here we go. Okay, there's that, and then we're going to reinitialize, take 2, go back to the property file, and then do that. Yeah, I just deleted it. It's gone. Okay, take 7. This time with more gusto. Now just leave it. Don't overwhelm the service. There we go. That'll be it. So now we go back to this. Take 7. Yes, we do have a neurotic dog available for adoption. Prancer is a demonic, neurotic dog that has a unique appearance reminiscent of gremlins. If you're interested in learning more about Prancer or arranging a visit, please let me know. And how. Okay? So that's worked. So now let's comment out that undo initialization. I had it in a bad state there, but it's fine now. Okay? So now I can ask that question all day long. The very next thing I'm going to want to do is
pick this guy out?
Yeah, I want to like schedule an appointment to visit and then adopt this doggo. So how do we do that?
Well, one way to do this is you would most likely, if you were at Pooch Palace, you'd have a service, right? That would be about setting up the schedule when you can come. And this enters the realm of tool calling.
Other tab. Yeah.
There we go. I'm learning a Mac.
Like right now.
And so what tool calling is a feature that AI models got mid-2023. And it's kind of non-obvious how it works. Normally, you just do request response with a service, right? Here it's a little bit different. So here we have a chat request, and inside that chat request is a description of what functions or what tools you have. And that's a tool definition that contains a certain schema. It's written in JSON. You give it a name, get weather in this case. What does it do? Gets weather given a location. Returns, Celsius or Fahrenheit, whatnot. So if you ask the question, what should I wear today in Amsterdam? Along with that request is going to go the listing of the tool, what you just saw in the JSON. Goes to the AI model, and now it's thinking, right? To colloquially say, and says, oh, I could answer this question because I have this tool. I don't even know what the temperature is today in Amsterdam. So let me call it. So now OpenAI in this data center is going to call back to you, your client that you wrote, and say, oops, let's invoke this function with these arguments. We happily do that. We return this value. And now it has the result. And it thinks some more and says, oh, are there any other tools? Maybe I need to call more. And so it can do this multiple times until it's finally content. It has all the data, or at least it exhausted all its possibilities to get as much data as it can. And then it'll say, yeah, you should wear a jacket and bring an umbrella. So all of this system prompts, forcing JSON, in the beginning, before there was a JSON mode, you literally had to put in the prompt, please give me JSON in this format. If not, my grandmother might die. Right? You're going to have to threaten it, right? Because it really didn't want to return JSON. It really wanted to return text. Sometimes you even get a response. Sure, Mark, here's your JSON. Curly brace. You're like, come on, man. Really? I just said. So instruction following has gotten better. And as we move along in this timeline, models became cheaper. Multimodality started to come in. So images, videos, open source, in particular, Llama from Meta came on the scene. And now instead of having 4K words to send over, you can send around 128K. That kind of became a good sweet spot for these things in early 2024. So I'll hand it back over to Josh to implement a tool for us.
Right, we want to adopt.
To pick up our friend.
Yeah. So let's go down here and build a Pojo, right? Typical Spring style. Dog adoption scheduler, right? And we're going to create a method here that returns the time, schedule pickup appointment, okay? And we're going to have a few parameters here, the dog ID and the string name of the dog, okay? So let's just do something silly so we can prove it's working. We're going to say that we want something in the future, 3 days from now, okay? Chrono date, days, and then that. And, I'll print out, scheduling pickup appointment for dog ID with name blah, okay? Like that. And we'll say name, and we'll say this one here is the ID, voila, okay? So we've done that, and we're going to return just the instant. I want to serialize that into a string, so I'll use the Spring configured object mapper, the Jackson object mapper, which will bring most of what I need. That's the constructor, but of course that brings an exception. So I'll have this there, throws exception. Yep, there's that. And then we're going to do return that, right? Time this dot object mapper dot write value as string, like so.
And a print line so we see it's invoked.
Here.
Oh,
it's multiple line print lines.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. And good. Yeah, there we go. 2 lines, but really I'm just returning a string, okay? And it's 3 days in the future. That's the important bit here, okay? Keep that in mind. Now we need to tell Spring AI about this new capability. So we're going to use the tool annotation and describe the tool, right? And I have some very specific text that I want to use here to make sure I get that right. So let's see. Dog, code, Josh Long, attic, 2025, Dev Nexus, Bootiful AI, readme, grep, pickup, grep, schedule. There you go. This is the text I'm going to use. So I'll be very, very clear about this because it corresponds to the things I've got there in the HTTP. So schedule an appointment to visit or adopt a dog. Okay, That's the tool. Now I want to also annotate these parameters. I have to say this is a tool param. Okay, and the description is the ID of the dog, right? And tool param description is the name of the dog. Good. So that's this, and now I just need to tell Spring AI's chat client about this component which has these tool definitions within. They're just methods, right, with return values and so on. So let's take that bean type, and when we're configuring the chat client here, I'll plug in a default tool. So there's this, and I can actually just pass in a reference to that bean, this, pointer, Go there. Voila. Okay? That should do it, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's restart that. And go back to HTTP here. Yeah, I'm good. Okay, so now, do you have any neurotic dogs? Okay, first question. Okay, yes, we do have a neurotic dog available for adoption. Prancer is, okay, good. Next, great. When can I visit to adopt Prancer? Right? If everything goes to plan, it should be 3 days from now. Yep, you can visit to adopt Prancer on March 9th in 1540 UTC. So I guess that's about right. 5 hours from now.
I have to leave time zone.
Yeah, I know. Imagine this early. It's insane. Okay. So did it work? Yes, it did. Look at that.
Woo!
We've got our,
System out print line for the win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so next time, if somebody ever calls you,
Print line.
no, the other one,
Calls you what?
with the thing we just showed.
Dog?
No, starts with a T.
Tool.
Yeah. If somebody ever calls you that, say thank you. I'm very useful to my business. Okay? That's what they're trying to say to you. Anyway, next.
Yeah.
I think we are in a good place, but this is local. Sometimes it's local is what you want. Farm grown, local food, good. Software, business functionality, maybe not. Maybe you want to centralize that. Maybe that should be like reusable.
Yeah. So, how do you create and share tools effectively? People, started doing this. So like, well, of course you can make libraries, but the fine folks, how do I do that?
Click on
Oh
that.
yeah, click on it. So, wouldn't it be nice if we were able to use tools written in other languages, right? Have an ecosystem of tools. What about the reverse, right? Have Java tools that are written with Spring AI used in non-Java environments. So part of the motivation to solve this problem.
There are other environments besides Java?
I heard about PHP.
That's not real. That's a hallucination.
That's true.
We talked about that. Okay.
Python. Python is probably the most active area because it's kind of the tip of the spear where all this stuff happens. But yeah, other stuff.
I've never heard of this.
So hence was born by Anthropic just last November, this technology called Model Context Protocol, MCP. And it is a unified way to connect different AI models to different sources and tools, right? And so this delivers on the promise I just said of being interoperable across different languages, basically based on JSON RPC as the data format exchange. It's bidirectional, so you have events going back and forth, so it's very rich, very interactive protocol. There are 2 types of transports, and on top of that, you can have synchronous interaction or asynchronous interaction. Local means a process gets spawned, literally the server, and you communicate with it as a client over standard I/O and standard error, or remote over HTTP. And so there's a broad set of capabilities that come with the Model Context Protocol, which is meant to encapsulate sort of the units that are most important and are constantly rewritten and need to be shared amongst AI applications. So this is not just tools, but we're focusing on that, but it's also prompts. It's also access to resources, meaning files on your file system, because we want to write an AI coding assistant. It's got to change your files. And sampling, and I have a little laundry list after that, but we'll focus on tools. So here what you see is you can have a client next to a server, and maybe that server is connected to some database. You can chat with your SQL table. That's a good example of a tool. Or it's done over the internet. And even though this was November last year, the Spring AI team kind of jumped on this early and collaborated with Anthropic to provide the Java SDK for the Model Context Protocol. So this is a screenshot of Anthropic's website, or actually it's the Model Context Protocol website created by them. And you can see at first there was a Python SDK, and then there was a TypeScript SDK. We contributed the Java one. And last but not least, there's a Kotlin one for all the Kotlin fans out there. Written by who? Yeah, JetBrains. So, this is what we're able to do in a very short period of time.
This was not easy again, keep in mind what he just said. November, right? I know that feels like a million years ago, but November, last year, they announced Model Context Protocol as a thing. It came into existence for the very first time. Actually, OpenAI was announced in November of 2022. Something about November. Also, we had Spring Boot 3.4. Maybe that's the best month of the year. Anyway, They announced Model Context Protocol right then and there, and within like days, we already had something kind of resembling support for it.
Yeah,
And then
I'd say
within a few weeks,
it was incredible.
Incredible. A lot of work on the Spring AI team.
Our tech lead, right?
Yeah.
For Spring AI, his name is Christian.
Christian.
Yeah.
Just a lot of work.
He used to look like this.
This is what it looked like before, okay?
Yeah.
Lots of long hair.
Young
the
man.
stress on him.
Yeah.
His hairline receded 2 feet, okay? This is him now.
Yeah.
After that effort. It was just so sad to see.
But big round of applause.
Thank you, Christian. Christian's amazing, okay?
So, it's a pretty traditional client-server stuff, right? You can have a Java MCP client. It talks to servers in other languages. Note you can use different AI models. So this protocol is from Anthropic, but you can use it with OpenAI, which we're doing right now. Sorry, Anthropic. For example, one common thing that is in the introductory material is to use a local server to talk to your file system. Like, what's there? Edit this file, do that kind of stuff. Or as a cute little chat with your table type functionality, chat with your SQL. And you can go down that rabbit hole and make them better and better. But, for a quick, small program, you can literally chat with your table, and it's pretty cool when you do that. And of course, we provide a lot of developer tooling on top of that, Spring Boot starters. As you'll see, Josh demo, you can build one of these things in minutes. The reverse, right? Java script, Python clients can connect to Spring servers, MCP servers, and you have, again, these transport options. SSE here is server-side events, so there is, rich capability going back and forth, and again, you can have synchronous and asynchronous. So it's quite a big stack in some sense. And now, there is a cottage industry of directories. Right? I think everyone's fighting to be the directory. So in my mind, this is like the movie The Matrix, where they're on the roof and they say, do you know how to fly an Apache helicopter? And they go, yeah. And they go, give me a minute. And then, you just go there and download your favorite tool, and you're done, right? You want a transcript, of your YouTube video? Yeah, just download one of these guys, call it from Java, you're done, right? Really powerful new tool in your proverbial toolbox.
There's hundreds of MCP services out there in every different language, but it doesn't matter. You just consume it from their endpoint there. Hey, actually, what it kind of reminds me of? Do you remember the whole, I'm not trying to jinx it. This is actually a flattering comparison. Don't freak out. Don't run. It kind of reminds me of the SOA stuff. You remember 20 years ago, we were talking about SOA and the whole dream of reusable services, right? Not microservices. Microservices is all about going faster as an organization, and doing small, singly focused, independent, process-centric services was part of that, but it wasn't why you did it, right? As opposed to SOA, where it was very much why you did it. You did it to centralize your services, and at some point we had those directories of
maybe we should revive them.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So all that to say, but this is much better than the SOA stuff, because again, what was the big pain that came out of all that, right? It was integration. It was figuring out how to get two different things and glue them together. It was concurrency and all that stuff. The AI does all that now. It's literally in control of all these things. It can invoke it however it wants. It can do, whichever one. You don't have to spend time, agonizing over WSDL, WSDL, all that kind of stuff. So let's go back to our demo here, and let's build up an MCP service. Okay. So we've got this this scheduler here. I'm going to go back and we're going to build a new service from the initializer here. Did I already set it up? I already did, didn't I?
No.
No. Okay. Start that Spring AI. Go here. I'm going to build a new service. I'm going to call this service. I'm going to call it service because I'm amazing with names. Okay? I get that from my dad. My dad was amazing with names. When I was a small boy, we had a small white dog, and my father named him White Dog. Again, very, very good with names. So we're going to add the MCP server, and we're going to add the web support. We're going to hit generate. We're going to open this up. Go there, UAO, service.zip. Okay? And we're just going to make sure this runs on port 8081, so we don't have a port conflict. And then otherwise, we're just going to copy and paste the code from the existing scheduler code, right? Okay, so cut and paste even. Here's that. Take that over here, paste, done. So now we need to tell Spring AI's autoconfig to export our functionality for MCP consumers to find. So we're going to say method tool callback provider builder, okay? And we're just going to give it a pointer to the dog scheduler. Okay, there we go. And tool objects scheduler, and there you go. That's that. Okay, that's it. That's how you get an MCP service up and running. Okay, easy. I'm just moving the logic from one code base to another. Now I have to consume it back here in the adoptions application. That's a little bit different, but again, not all that much. So we're going to say MCP sync client, and the client is it's like it's the connection. It's our connection to the other service. So we're going to say var MCP equals MCP client.sync. Remember, there's async and sync variants. We're going to say new HTTP SSE transport, and we're going to point it to, the URL HTTP localhost 8080, not that. There you go, 8081. So there's that, and we're going to say build mcp.initialize and return MCP. Now, again, this MCP client stuff, this is now part of Model Context Protocol, the actual official group. Okay, so now we have this done. Let's teach Spring AI to know what to do by adapting this type with a bit of code here. So we'll do that and go back down to our chat client. And instead of passing in this directly, we're going to say new MCP sync client tool provider. MCP tool. There you go, that one. And MCP sync client. All good. Restart. Go back to this.
Did you put the port in your HTTP?
Didn't I? Up here?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
that should be fine. Let's just get rid of that. Restart. Okay. And now we go back to the HTTP console here. Okay. And we're going to say, do you have any neurotic dogs? Actually, let's line this up so it's all horizontal. Okay. So do you have any neurotic dogs on the adoptions thing? Okay. Yes, I have a neurotic dog named Prancer. A demonic, yeah, okay, great. Next. Great, when can I visit and schedule to visit, adopt, whatever? Okay, it says you can visit Prancer on March 9th, and you can see it over here on the console. That got called. So now the model knows to call that same service remotely, right? And we're in that. We use Spring and Java because that's the best way. But if you were, a degenerate, you could use some of those other languages and it would still work, right? Good stuff. Okay, now I think we did a good job.
I think we did.
Yeah.
High five.
Go team. I'm kidding. You're not degenerates, unless you're doing PHP.
So what would a talk about AI in 2025 be without the word agent? I don't know. I spend a lot of time in AI. Maybe people don't, but this word is getting very overused. But it's kind of maturing right now. And I think the opinion of what it does is kind of solidifying. And so really, it's using an AI model to interact with its environment, aka what it has available, its tools, to solve a task, right? And I think this is the key thing. You're giving it a goal. You're not just saying, what's the weather, right? It's kind of a goal, but not really, right? It's not a complicated goal. It's a one-shot back and forth. And so this system, an agentic AI system, is combining really planning, multiple steps, right? Figuring out how to achieve a goal. And this involves using memory, and it involves using the actions. So the AI model itself is what handles the reasoning and the planning. And what you see now is a shift in where the models are being offered by the various labs. They're shifting into sort of research or thinking models. And they're specifically trained now to plan out a way to solve your problem. So that's different than the previous generation models. And in fact, it takes much longer. So they're not very well suited for chat, but they're well suited for, do this, I'll come back in 5 minutes. Let me see if it's done, right? And the tools that we were talking about before, these come into the picture here, is basically what this agent has available to do. So there are different system types. Essentially, you have this primitive that we've built up. And this is the primitive that you now start to combine. You have your input, you have your large language model, or your research model, and you have this supporting cast of characters. You have ways to retrieve data, you have ways to execute APIs, and you have chat memory. And all of this is kind of like one step of a multi-step process where you get output. And so how do you organize a multi-step process? Now, there's kind of two forks in the road. One is you define your own workflow, right? You say do step 1, then step 2, then step 3, then step 4. Each step having some variation of this going on. Or, this is the sci-fi moment, you just let the agent, the AI, plan it out all for you. You don't specify how, it just figures it out, right? So that's great, and that's coming. But right now, if you want to start going in this direction, right, workflows are better, they're easier to understand, they're more predictable. Doesn't mean that science fiction today will be reality next year, But that's the way to go. And they're shockingly similar. So here is a list of the workflow types as popularized in the community. So you have chain, parallelization, routing, orchestration, evaluator, optimizer, workflows. For me, with the gray hair, this harkens back to the old book from Gregor Hope, Enterprise Integration Patterns. It's what Spring Integration, the project, was based on. And there is literally a one-to-one correspondence here. Chain workflow, what does that mean? The output of one call is fed into the input of the other in a chain. I'm sure we all heard of Lang chain. That's what it did, right? It just tied things together. And now it's by this fancy word, chain workflow. But, if we can have method rename considered a refactoring pattern, we can have a chain workflow considered a pattern as well. Then parallelization, right? This is nothing more than, splitting, joining again, aggregating. Routing, very important. I mean, in most real-world applications, the first thing that happens when you receive the user request is, what is this user asking, right? Is it on topic, off topic? If it's on topic, of the 5 topics I'm supposed to handle, let me route that request to the appropriate subsystem in my application that's dedicated to handling that type of request. And then you're just kind of in this general orchestration land, like, loops, whatnot. So, for example, the evaluator optimizer pattern, this is you have 2 chat clients. One of them has a system prompt. You're a code generator for Java, right? The other one has a system prompt. You're a code reviewer of Java. And then you type in, write me bubble sort. And now comes the first response. That gets piped into the reviewer, who says, yeah, that was good, but maybe you should do this, right? He goes, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And it goes in a loop back and forth until the judge, right? The evaluator says all is good, or you reach a certain maximum number of loops.
Wait, so Doc?
Yeah?
I'm listening to you here. Are you saying that if I wanted to, I could use like Spring Integration and Spring AI and I'd have an Agentic framework?
Yes.
Are you saying if I use Spring Batch and Spring AI, I'd have an Agentic framework?
Yes.
What if I used Spring Cloud Stream and Spring AI?
Sophisticated, but yes.
What if I used Camel and Spring AI? Would I have an Agentic framework?
That works.
What if I used Flowable and Spring AI? Would that be Agentic?
Yeah. Why not?
Okay, what if I used a freaking fork join pool?
That's my
and
favorite
Spring AI?
one. The simplest
Would
one.
that be Agentic?
Yes.
What about just a for loop and Spring AI? Is that also typically Agentic?
So that's the joke. Software engineers define agents as LLMs plus loops. And then all the machine learning people kill themselves. But, that's the background we come from. What can I tell you? And there's a blog post, and this is a jumping off point in the bottom there. Sorry, it's so small, but you can Google for Agentic patterns, Spring AI, you'll get this blog post. And there we implement all of these patterns, and you're kind of off to the races. So wrapping up, agents and coding assistants, which I highly suggest everyone check out, kind of started craze, let's say mid-2024, really matured late 2024. Reasoning models are now coming into the picture. There's another more sophisticated model called computer use, which was introduced by Anthropic, later followed up on by a similar model from OpenAI. And this is literally operating a computer, like looking where the pixels are and opening the windows. And you watch it in action, one thing is cool is it knows all the keyboard shortcuts you couldn't type because you don't have enough hands, or enough fingers, right? So it's pretty slick to watch this in action. It's a little creepy too. Model context protocol was there. And now we're in this phase, I think, of maturation in a way, right? Things are getting cheaper. In fact, even before last March, or March we're at now, when DeepSeek reasoning came out, there's a super Moore's law in effect. The cost for performance what you're getting is exceeding Moore's law by like orders of magnitude. So people are getting really, really good at running these models really, really efficiently. And the impact of this was that a couple orders of magnitude cheaper processing of a big reasoning model freaked everybody out, and the whole stock market lost $1 trillion, right? Just think about that. It's kind of amazing.
It is amazing.
Unbelievable. But on a more positive note, the field progresses. There are now 400 million OpenAI ChatGPT users. It's not going away, even though there's a lot of hype. So hopefully we've given you kind of a realistic grounding for you to get started. A lot of resources online. And thank you for attending.
Right. Thank you. Remember, all the hype. If you drive around San Francisco, you'll see billboards with like Agentic this and workflow that and AI. It's what we just showed you. All of that is based on the ability to do what we just talked about, which is ultimately just integration. It's a REST API for Pete's sake, right? Spring and Java are uniquely situated to do this particularly well. Thanks, everybody.